All right, David. Thanks for meeting me here. So we're in your trailer right now. We're recording the podcast. For anyone new to the show, this is the JCS show. The core question on this podcast is, what are your values today in the context of your life story? So I kind of like to just jump right into the middle and then fill in the context as we go. But Mountaineering, that's something that you mentioned. You're a client at the gym I work at. Mm-hmm. And we've had chats and stuff, but Mountaineering is something I'm interested in, something you have some experience with. So let's just jump right into there, and then we'll kind of fill in around that.
Yeah, in the context of my core values, mountaineering isn't the end-all be-all, mm-hmm. but for me, I grew up in Houston, and when I was a kid, we lived on the bayou, and so it was kind of where there's a lot of trees and green and explore, and so from a very early age, I always wanted to be in there, going around, and I would get in trouble because I come back and there's in Texas there's alligators in there and there's poisonous snakes, and I'd come out and my dad's I'd get a whipping, but I just couldn't keep out of it. And so
what was it about it? Was it the break from the civilization of Houston? Was it being free from people?
Part of it's free, but there was just, I don't know how I can describe it, in that there was other, we grew up sailing. My dad was sailed boats his whole life and still does, and we go down there, but that I like being on the water, but it wasn't like that same thing. And so Houston was unique in a lot of places in Texas where there's actually green, and where I went to college in East Texas was Piney Woods, and so there's something that drew to me. So at that level was where I started getting in and exploring, going on hikes and doing things, and camping out in later years. And it was when I'd say when it really, really hit me is my first wife and I were taking a trip to Colorado with my two oldest sons, and they were 4 and 6 or 5 and 7, I can't remember. And I'd been to Colorado once before. We just flew in at night for skiing or something, and we were driving in to Colorado Springs, and there's, I think it's Pikes Peak was there. It's just these mountains were just standing above me, and it was like you would say a burning bush moment. It was just something that just was kind of internally shook me to my core. I was just in awe. Very few times in my life am I oh my God, and that was one of them. And we went to a place to camp, and these two Utes, these two young guys they were coming down on the trail next to our campsite, and I just asked what they're doing. We just climbed Pikes Peak, or they just climbed the mountain, and I was just it just kind of what they climb this. I knew people climb mountains, but there's just a real these real people. They're just coming down casually. They did it, and there was something about me that really just wow. It just kind of planted a seed, and I guess the pivot really after that I started doing some trips to Colorado, and I'd do some hikes a little bit here and there, and some kind of work towards a mountain, I guess, and but hadn't really got into it. And my good friend of mine, in fact, I'm going to go see her on my drive down to Texas. I'm going to visit her in Colorado. We went to high school together, and we stayed friends, and I remember her telling me that, I'm going to go climb these 14ers with my girlfriends, and I was like, what does that mean, And I guess it was about 2002 or 3, I can't remember the year. My family took me and my kids to this place in Estes Park where it was kind of one of those, I wouldn't say a camp, but they just take care of everything, and they have all these coupons for different activities. And one of them was climb Long's Peak, which was right across the street. And I was like, oh, that sounds cool. So that's where I used my ticket for, or one of them, and the guy, he kind of ran the place, so I had to meet him like 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, and we went up, and I mean, it was just awesome. In fact, he told me I had like the second fastest time up of anybody he'd taken up before, and the other ones were like long, they were like with those super long distance runner, like ultra runners. And he was like, I wish I'd known you would go fast. You were going that fast, because he carried his heavy pack. But it just kind of, once we got up there, it was just this thing that just got me addicted, and so
you had always liked it, and then once you got into it,
it just was just like this thing. I mean, I have a addictive type of personality, but that was one that just like it set. And so over the years, I started many trips up to Colorado, and my second wife and I would go there a lot, and I just started doing these 14ers, like from where I was.
What is the 14ers?
They're the 14,000 feet or higher.
Oh, okay.
And in Colorado, there were, I think there's 54. They just gave another one of
just made the cut.
Made the cut, so something happened. Yeah. So there's somewhere around 50, 54 or so, 5, I can't remember now. And I've done like 25 of them. Cool. And then there's, in the lower United States, I think the other Rainier would be one, and Mount Whitney, there in California, which is like the highest mountain in the lower 48 states. Okay. Yeah. And then, so I had gotten into that, but I wanted to do more, and I had this Bikram Yoga studio that I left the practice of law to take over, and I was doing that, which gave me, once we got going and things were doing well, it gave me the freedom to go do these things, like the trips to Colorado, or do these things. And I wanted to do something more than just like the scrambles, I wanted to learn more about how to do these things in the mountains safely. Like, there's a skill set, and I knew I didn't have it, and then I knew there was like Knowles course, and I forget this other one, and I think Knowles is the guy who started. I can't remember the name, but they were the ones that trained the 10th Mountain Division in World War II to do the climbing over there. So there was a lot. That's kind of where they were in, right there near Copper Mountain, I think is where they did that. So anyway, so I knew there was a course based on it, and I asked a buddy of mine, this guy that came to my yoga studio, and I knew he had done some climbing where he'd gone down into South America and done these things, and I was like, hey, I know you've done these things. I want to go to learn how to climb. I'm thinking about going to this Knowles course. You want to go with me? He goes, oh, fuck that. Come up to my place in Maine. He has his house in the summer, and so long story short, we got a bunch of other guys at the yoga studio. We went to his place in Maine for this, and then we hiked on the Appalachian Trail 2 years in a row, just sections of it, and it was a shit show the first year. Like, none of us had really, except for him, had really backpacked much and how to carry everything, but it was like this thing where you're on this, there's other people out there, and it was just more of what I wanted to do. And then he got me into doing the Grand Canyon rim to rim after that, and over the time a few of those, and then one time a rim to rim to rim, and then he started this group of friends that he grew up with, and I kind of got in part of it, and it's called Whacked Out Tours. And so my friend Jeff was always setting something up for the next thing before we're finishing this thing, and they were planning on going to Everest Base Camp and go climb some mountains up there. And at the time I couldn't afford it, plus I'd never been on a glacier before where they had, and so they went to Everest, and I looked for a course, and I found this mountaineering course. It was actually on Shuckson. It was the first time I was in Washington. Okay. And that's where I did my first glacier travel stuff and learned there. And that's where I fell in love with Washington. Just being in Seattle, I was just like, oh my God. It was like the same thing. And when I saw Pikes Peak, it was just, Seattle was like, oh my God. There's this climbing place. There's this Mountain Harbor is right here. There's all these things and all these people, and the REI where it started, and then being up in those mountains, which are completely different than Colorado, because these up here you have the glaciers. This is where here Rainier is like where Americans really cut their teeth on learning how to. If they're going to prep for going to Denali or going to Everest or anything like that, this is where you learn. And Bellingham just happens to be a unique place for, with a lot of training that takes place here.
Is that, so we're in Bellingham now, is that how you ended up back here?
It was a fluke. So I did that course. It was like a 6-day course, and then the next year we did Mont Blanc. So that was in France, and we climbed Mont Blanc, and that was, that's like 16,000 feet, and that was really cool. And some other mountains in Switzerland while we're training. But I lost my train of thought.
Coming back to Bellingham.
Oh, so I didn't even know about Bellingham when I was here for that, really at all. I mean, I'm sure I'd seen it on like some outside magazine or
just a dot on the map.
Or this girl that had taught for us for a while, and I knew she moved up to Washington, and maybe I kind of heard something, but it was like a few years after Mont Blanc. It was like 2015, and we had some things happen, and the studio was like, we were at a place where things were shifting on the Bikram world, and like we needed to it was time to pivot and sell. And same time in our neighborhood, they were buying just houses for lots and tearing them down and making McMansions. So we were able to sell our home, and we wanted to trying to find a place where we wanted to live. And when I met my second wife at Bikram's training, she was from Texas, and actually we had mutual friends, same age, but she was living in Oregon. And the first thing I asked is like, "Are you ever go back to Texas?" She goes, "No way." And then she ended up coming down there with the promise of some place we'd go somewhere else. And so she was pushing for the Pacific Northwest because of Oregon, and I liked Washington. And so we came up here, and we're just kind of looking for areas north of Seattle where to go. And one day I was like, why don't we just go up to, I climbed over here, maybe we should go check it out, and this or that, just kind of to get the day to do that. And so we went through Glacier all the way up to Baker. So it was on the other side of where I had climbed. But we stopped at Graham's. I don't know if you've ever been there on the way.
Is it a restaurant?
It's in Glacier on the way. It's like a little convenient, like a small store there. Yeah, and we were in there, and it's like off season, it's like October or something, and so there's nobody there. We're going in to get some food as we're heading up to Artist Point. And the guy behind the counter is like, he's like, "Have you? What are you guys up to?" "Oh, we're just trying to figure out a place to live." Where are you looking? We told him we were going. So been to Bellingham, and we're like, "No." And he goes, "Well, you got to go check it out. It's like Portland was 20 years ago." And my wife went, "Rrr." So we just drove down in there, and we had already had this list of the things we wanted where we lived. Like we're both were in recovery of alcohol and stuff, and working on other things like that that we were involved in. And then we wanted a place to go practice yoga. We wanted it where it was outdoors. I wanted the mountains. She wanted the water. And the people. And it was just like the second we got into town, I was like, holy shit, this is it. It was like this is everything we put on our list, which is something that has repeated in our lives and in my life before. I've made this list, forget about it, and later on you go, oh my God, that's everything. And so we ended up making the decision and moved here like 7 months later. We came back up to check it out a couple more times. So yeah, and so when I got here, I was like, I want to get into this mountaineering, and I didn't know really anything. I was just like Googling, trying to find groups that do, climbing, and I came across the Mountaineers, which I didn't realize at the time is this group that started back in the early 1900s, and that's where Jim and Lou Whitaker started, where they learned how to climb the mountains when they were kids. And
who are they?
There are these twin brothers, and Lou Whitaker has Whitaker Mountaineering, but he also is, I believe it's Rainier Mountain Guides. And if you're going up towards Rainier for like artists or from whatever side, there's like a little town where they gear up people and take people from there.
Okay.
And his brother Jim was the first American to climb Everest in 1962. Yeah. And then Jim Whitaker was also the first, I guess, employee for REI. He was kind of managed their things. So when REI started, he was the first one, and he did that for many, many years. And then had some stories like became friends with Bobby Kennedy and all these things. But anyway, it was just more of. So I got involved with the Mountaineers, and just. And really, the main reason is, and I guess this would go back to my core values on climbing, was I wanted to know how to, and I started further back, I want to know how to do this right. I know things happen because I watched enough.
When you say right, what do you mean, like safely? Or?
Safely, yeah. So when I lived in Dallas, and I couldn't go do all this all the time, and so I would read every book I could find. I get any video I could find. This is before you had Netflix and stuff, and I would like watch everything I could, just try to understand it, and but to put it into practice. And so, and I had and what really got me to be instills today, I guess my core value in mountaineering is my whacked out tours guys. We would go every year to New Hampshire and go ice climbing there, and they did some other stuff. We'd go to the East Coast, but we always, the big thing was to go climb Mount Washington in the middle of winter because it's like the worst weather, highest winds in the world. And so we did that, a few times. They've been doing it for a while, and then one year, one of the guys who lived up there said, "Hey, let's go climb Mount Adams," which is right next to it. This is in the White Mountains, and a longer story short is we looked at the route, planned the route, and there was like 7 or 8 of us, and it was freezing, like below 10, just going up, just climbing through the woods, and there were kind of 2 ways, and one was where we thought we were going to go, it was just ice bulbs, like you're just not going to get over it. So we went up, and we had all the gear we needed. Like we had all of our ropes, we had our harnesses on, we had our ice axes, helmets, like everything you need to be safe in the mountains and doing that kind of climbing. And we had our experience was it's like, but it was enough that we could get through if we needed to. And so we started climbing up the King's Ravine, and it's it doesn't seem super steep, and it's covered with kind of like just enough soft ice that your crampons would really grip, And so we're just a bunch of buddies going up, and we're all just going up, and we all got this stuff. We're not roped up or anything. We have no ice things in the, ice anchors in there. Just, and it was really at one point I was going up, and I looked down, and I was like, oh shit, this is a no fall zone. Like you can't fall here. Like you don't, and I know I said that out loud, but none of us really just like made this conscious thing. Like maybe we should do something. Maybe we should be more careful.
Right.
And what I realized later is, I'll get to the long story short is we were going up, and we had, the group split a couple of times where the faster guys, especially getting, so I was at one point, and these 4 guys were with me, and then they were getting their stuff together quicker than I could, so they took off, and they said, we're going to go this way. So I'm by myself trying to get my stuff on, and the last 2 were coming up, and it's like windy, can't really hear anything, everything's fogging up, and I just said, blah, blah, blah. I said, they're going this way, this is the way I'm going to go. And so Leo and Gabe were getting their stuff going, so then I was kind of by myself. And I remember going up, not far, and I went the direction they said to go, and I'm like on this like hard boulder of ice, and I'm going, oh shit, like I can't fall here, like I can't make any mistakes, you know, and I got over it. And
what is, when you're in those situations, like it's high stress, it's dangerous, like are you stressed, are you calm, is that what you're trying to avoid when you're up there? Do you think that's like
you definitely don't want to freak out.
Yeah.
I generally, the way my personality or how my mind works, how my body works is when it gets to where it's like intense, that's where I thrive. Like that's where I can focus. If it's not, and so I don't really, I mean, I've had some things happen where it's kind of, but I just don't freak out about it when it's in that situation. But otherwise, I could be freaking out over stupid stuff.
Yeah,
like,
I'm kind of the same. And I've honestly, after going through certain kind of crazy phases of life, I've reflected and been like, oh, I think subliminally I was probably seeking out that chaos because that's where I feel calm. That's where I feel like I have an advantage, a relative advantage.
Yeah,
do you kind of experience that?
Yeah, I mean, it's part of I would say AD is part of a spectrum of executive functioning type neurodiversity, and is people, from my understanding of it, I did some time learning a lot about it, was that it's like, if we're not really excited about something, or it's really like intense, like we have to do it, it's harder. But when it comes to like, there's a crisis, we thrive, you know, and that just attracts people like us. Like, you know, my core values is part of it's just that's the way my brain works. Like I'm attracted to those things because that's where I feel alive, and that's where I feel like I'm part of, versus these other ways where you have to have, you know, a lot of skill or all the time focus, or these other things. I just never fit with those people, you know. And so
just one more thing on that is like, does the threshold for chaos, like as that gets higher, as you get exposed to more and more stressful situations, like is it harder to achieve that same level of focus?
I've never been one that goes like, there's different, everybody's in their different range, and some people like they got to go to the ultimate, like unless they're like on death's edge, they're not going to feel alive. I don't feel the need to have to get that much, and probably because I don't know, as I've gotten older, especially, I just kind of, is it worth it? Yeah. And you know, it's like the barbell we have at Terrain says nobody cares. Yeah. It's like when you think about these things, nobody fucking cares. Yeah. You're at a Christmas party, and someone's asking about, oh, your trip, and you start going on, and they drift off in about 20 seconds. You know, they just don't really care, and so that's kind of helped. But but it is an attraction to it, and I do think, you know, obviously if you look at all the videos out these days and the things people do, but I think we've always been that way. You know, it's just, you know, it gets dumbed down a lot here because we used to be outdoors and being more physical outside. A lot of it, in my belief, has been taken to, you get stuck in these video games or these things online, and that you're getting this, trying to get this hit, but it's like here, and you're not really. Yeah, it's different, you know, and you get caught in
mental. It's not physical.
It's
better when they're.
And so for me, and I've succumbed to it. Like I used to always read all the time, and you know, and you only had whatever show was on once a week, and you know, and now with internet, I get drawn into it. But up here, it's been nice because, you know, there's so many options and so many people that do it. So it's like it makes it. That's what I love being here.
Yeah, for anyone watching, Bellingham is really cool. There's some of the best trails, mountains right here, the ocean's right here. Big mountain biking community, trail running community, mountaineering community.
I'm listening. I'm just making sure this guy hasn't. I don't think he's. They always flake out at the end. At the last minute. Anyway, so Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, I'm on the precipice of moving to Texas right now for, I hope, only a year and a half. Because when I moved here, I was just like a kid in the candy store. I mean, my wife liked it, but not as much as me. I was just like, I fucking love it, And I did the Mountaineers course, and I really loved what I learned. I struggled a little bit, and and it was great to go through that process because I guess I didn't end the story about we were in New Hampshire. So after I'll jump back and you can edit this. When I left Leo and Gabe, and Gabe lived in Dallas. He used to come to my studio, and Jeff is the one that got me into all the whacked out tours and all these things. And Jeff and Gabe were best friends, and so we were the three ones in Dallas. And when we were training for something, the three of us would train together. And they're like 15, 20 years older than me. So anyway, so we were. So as I took off, and I was like, oh shit, and then I get through it, and then I go up, and then it just kind of levels out. And there's like the sun's there, it's warm, and you can see the last little bit to the top. It's not far. It's kind of walk off, and then my other friends are coming down, and I go up and hit it and come back. And then as we get to where we're going to go down, it's like it's flapping, and you have to go down. I'm looking down on the center thing we came up, and I'm like, no fucking way. I'm not going to try to go down that side, or the side that where I went through the bushes and all that stuff. Was like I went to the other side, and there was snow. And so I'm going to go down this way, and I was worried about avalanches. I don't know how. All I know about avalanches is you need to know your shit to understand what's likely to happen. And I just all I knew was I was going to get down as fast as I could, so I was down climbing. But when I started down, it was this surreal thing, especially looking back, that there was, one set of footprints going down in front of me, and in my mind, all I could think of, those are Leo's footprints. In just my mind, it was just Leo. There's Leo's footprints. And Gabe wasn't even in the. It was like it wasn't in my mind there.
And you just recognized his boot.
No, it was just it was like the voice in my head as I'm seeing this. That little voice says, there's Leo's prints, and it was just like. It wasn't like anything. It was just like that's where my maybe it was my we have this, however anybody wants to call it, like a connected to the universe spidey senses kind of thing that just kind of was subtly saying those are Leo's whatever footprints, kind of like that
abstract intuition.
But I didn't think anything about it other than those are Leo's things. I just was like that, and so I hustled down, and there was 5 other guys above me. But I was like, I'm ready to get the hell down. And so when I get towards the bottom, you kind of got to split and go around. And the place we didn't come up was over here, and so anybody coming down, they can't really see us until you get down and around. And I come down and go down, and Leo's just standing there, and just white face, and he's like, Gabe's dead. And I was like, what? He goes, yeah, he's dead. He's over there. And I go, what happened? He goes, well, and he was just in shock. Like he had called search and rescue. He got enough of thing. But we were out there where you're way up, and it's getting colder, like 10 below, and we were stupid. We didn't bring headlamps. We had some gear, but anyway, and I said, what happened? He goes, well, I was, right when we met, when Gabe and I were behind you, we took some time to help Gabe I helped Gabe get his mittens on and make sure he's okay, and so he could go. And so then he said, I looked at Gabe and said, you ready to go? And he said, yes. And so Leo started going. He said it was within 30 seconds or a minute at the most when he turned around to check on him, and he was just gone.
Fallen. Just
gone, yeah. So apparently he fell. We don't know if his crampons were loose. He could be kind of clumsy sometimes, or who knows what. But he fell, and and the Mountaineers, they teach you this ice arrest. Like if you fall, and we need to do it enough that if you do, you know to instantly, and when you're when you're climbing up in a place like that, you need to have it at the in a position where if you do fall, you can just lock it down in there.
That's
so
with your ice pick.
Yeah, and just ice axe, and you can get it in there, so you can just it slows you down at least. So I don't think he got it in time. It was probably, and so as he was going down, he ended up his body took him over to the right, and it was just, and I think he broke his neck. He just and that was really bad. And long story short, having to, each person they're just coming down one at a time and taking turns telling them what happened. And Jeff was like the last one, his best friend. And I told Jeff's friend that grew up with Greg, I said, I can't tell Jeff. And so he walks up to Jeff, and Jeff just falls apart. And so, long story short, we kind of wasn't intentional, but split the group. Where like 4 of the guys were getting Gabe down, and I was helping to get Jeff down because he was just such a mess, and it took a long way. And I ended up having to, I almost had to be the one to call Gabe's wife, which I was planning to do, but when I went to call my wife to kind of get, tell her what's happened, she started peppering me with questions, and I'm like, I can't. Anyway, but being through that, but after it was all said and done, your friend dies, and everybody's in shock, and a while later, and I'm back in Dallas, and I want to make sense of it all. There's that guy who did the movie where he was canyoning, and he got stuck. I can't remember where it was. And he had to cut his arm off.
I haven't seen it, but 27 hours.
127 hours. 127. Yeah, and then he wrote something about that, but he went on climbing all these. He was trying to climb all these summits in Colorado in the winter, and he was still with just a axe for an arm. He was already doing stupid stuff before that. Like he almost killed his friends. Like going down into snow when it was like not safe, and so basically I started reading like his book and some other things out there, and like the story about Gabe is in the American Alpine Club's annual thing of like what happened, and so I started researching it, and basically that's what I want to understand is like how does this happen, and what I realized is that in every kind of disaster like that, especially when you have a group of friends, that it's so much more likely that people are going to die or get seriously hurt because you're all.
You're saying like in a group it's more likely than in this.
Well, when it's a group of familiar, like you're all friends. There's no hierarchy. There's no this is the leader. It's just you guys. And so what I learned, and I read this over and over again, and then applied to us on that specific trip, was we're all friends. And you're going and you're doing this, and like the moment I stopped and looked down and go, oh shit, that's a no fall zone. Like, when I'm hiking up, and every one of us could have been thinking the same thing, but it's like, well, he seems okay. Yeah. And no one's saying any word. Like he thinks it's okay, and so there's no communication. And what happens is, and this is just how it is, they just take they'll go a little bit further into, the death zone of things for like, well, no one's, they seem okay, so I guess whatever this is going on is just like, it's not, I'm just overthinking it or something. Yeah. And then it ends up being this freaking disaster. Like, I don't know how many single times that happens. And so there was no person to say who's going to say something or some kind of plan or anything to discuss. And so, that's how it happened. And so after I moved up here and I started with the Mountaineers, that was kind of the forefront of my mind was I want to learn how to do this correctly. Like what are all the things for climbing safely, but at the same time is, what is the leadership? How do you do this in a group? And how does this happen? And so, and I did the course. And I liked it. I didn't like the Bellingham, the ones that ran that. It was a different. They were just a different approach to how they teach than I've learned to teach, and other. They're more like, I would say. Maybe it's changed, but it was like they just tell you what you're doing wrong. You get mad, you just try it again, versus like try to explain and try to understand where you're at. And I did one weekend trip with the Everest group, and I loved it because they were like, okay, it was like, let me show you, here's what you're doing, let me teach you through this and make you feel comfortable, because just like in how you teach, but in like in a group where they're hounding you for not doing it right, that's another thing that creates a situation where that person who's struggling and doesn't feel comfortable, all of a sudden they feel like they can't say anything because they're afraid this one's going to get mad at them for doing it wrong. And so that creates even though you're learning all these skills, if you don't have this, you're in this place where you don't feel like you could speak up, that you're not feeling like you don't understand something because they're going to yell at you, and that creates this other situation where you've just now added another level of danger, because then that person's not going to say anything, and they're going to screw up, or something's going to happen because they didn't say it, and then that's another way of how that stuff gets worse. And so I wasn't really about that, but and then after the Mountaineers, long story short, that's what I wanted to do. I wasn't a big fan of the people that were kind of it's all volunteer, but that attitude. So I had just started dirt biking, and I met a guy in the parking lot at Walker, and he asked me to go ride, and we became friends, and he was like a mentor for me for that, and he was also a climber, so we kind of and so it was in that, I just kind of gotten more involved in that versus with the Mountaineers. And but I guess like a year or so later, after I was going through a separation, divorce, and I got a call from one of the guys that was in my Mountaineers class, and he was like the only person, I was like the second oldest, he was the oldest, and this other lady, and they wanted me to go, asked if I wanted to go climb Rainier with them, and at the time I was like, my headspace is not safe right now. I said, I'm just like, I'm going through this separation, I just can't, I can't do it. Physically I could do it, but my mind is not there. So they said okay, and then they actually reached out like a month later. Theirs didn't work out, and at that time I was feeling better. And so at that point, we did a practice climb up on Ruth Mountain Glacier. Is if you're heading up to Mount Baker and you're going this first sharp turn, where there's a big parking lot there, but it goes up to Goat Mountain and stuff. Anyways, it's just kind of up there. It's just the top of the Nooksack, and there's a little glacier there, and so that's kind of where we went to do this practice to get ready and get our stuff together. That's a whole another side story, other than that should have given me a notice of like, these two aren't ready for that thing,
Yeah.
But I made a point, like I wasn't trying to be the leader. I was just like, there's three of us, and we're going to go do this thing next week, and told my story of what's happened, with the death of a friend, and other things have happened, and I just want to say, look, there's three of us, and and this is my experience. Why my friend died, I believe, is because there was no communication, and nobody wanted to speak up. So I want to make sure that we all, every one of us has absolute veto power to turn us around. Like if you don't feel safe, you say I don't feel safe, then we all turn around. We don't argue about it. We don't say a thing about it. We just say, okay. That way, whoever's feeling uncomfortable is not like, I don't want to ruin the trip. I don't want to make this bad, and maybe her, like there was one, her intuition was better than mine. I don't know, but it didn't matter. It was like, if that's, and so basically that's what happened. We got up to the end of the Disappointment Cleaver, and she and I didn't get along much, but we got right there. And she's just like, I can't go any further. Like, we're too late. It's too late in the day. And I'm like, it's not. And I'm watching these videos. It's like, it's right here. And I was so fucking pissed off. And there was many other things. Like, she was really, she and I did not get along at all as it was. But, and I was so mad. But I was like, okay, well, that's what I said. And you know what? Turn the fuck around. Just turn the fuck around. And who knows, that may have been right. The day before we were there, I didn't find this out till later, but it was further down the mountain on the way back where I think it was Easton Glacier, or what it was called. It broke through a snow bridge and fell in a crevasse. Right there as you're coming out of it all. So they got him out, but I mean, shit happened then, you know. So, I guess I think my whole story is, when you go back to my core values on this, I didn't think this was going to go this way, but it's, you got to look at, like, what's it worth. Like, I would love to go do Rainier. I've been to Everest Base Camp, and I climbed 2 mountains at 20,000 feet while I was there, and one of them, it's a longer story. I had gotten sick right before that, and the guides for me did not follow the way we were going to do it to give you the rest, and I was just torched. And I got it to some point, and it was like, wasn't very far, but I'm like, I'm done. I'm like, I know I can get up there, but if I have to come all the way back down and I'm already kind of cramping, it's like, I'm just not worth it. Like, this is a great picture right here. Nobody back in the States, there's maybe 1 in 10,000 that would care whether you made it to the top or not. Nobody gives a fuck. They just, so I was like realizing it's like letting go of my ego of being, you don't feel it. Don't go. And then I did the other one fine.
I've got my spinning, slant boards, fitness thing, and then I've got other balance boards. And when I remember there was one time I brought into the gym, you were using it. But when I tell people when they're using it for the first time, is you got to know when to bail early. It's like, if you're trying to do something and you're not sure what's gonna happen, you gotta bail. Even if you might be able to pull it off, it's better bail early, reset. Go for it again. But I think that's a good metaphor for life in general. It's just like, sometimes just gotta know when to bail, hop off the shift, reassess, come back fresh, and even if it slows you down a little bit, even if maybe you could have gotten it done, it's gotta know when to bail. And part of it, I think, is age, is where you realize that what's most important to be able to say I'm gonna bail versus, like, when we're teenagers, and especially when it's guys, and guys bond through shame, so they're gonna give you shit if you drop off this or that, and it's hard to get past that thing. But once you can get past that, of like, and then you realize that I'm sure you've experienced super high level athletes, more so than I have, I'm sure, is that the ones that have done the best, they're very methodical. They're not. They don't try to jump way ahead of where they are. They try to master this little thing, and then you add the next. Like the Mountaineers course, I'll give them credit, because there's several chapters all over Washington, so they're not unique in how they teach it. But what I learned when we got to the very last trip was we're just doing crevasse rescue up on Baker, and it's all these different things you got to go into play. And then I realized as we're going through, it's like, oh. Because it seems so scary way back here trying to go through all that stuff. And then you realize every little thing we did, we learned these little knots here. We would just go to this guy's house, for a couple of weeks, twice a week, couple of weeks, and we learned these little knots, simple little knots. And then we built up to, let's go to this big park and we'll do some orienteering. And it's just, they added these little things along just a little bit at a time, and you just focus on getting skilled at that level there, and then you move on, and at the end it was like, oh, well, this was like, it seemed insurmountable, but when you doing those things along the way, that's where I think that
creates this, not only you perform better in the long run, but it's safer. Like
Yeah.
I'm not trying to skip this step.
To build the foundation up, and then
Yeah.
narrow down to whatever the goal is. At
Yeah,
the
it's
top.
like having a discipline, and I think that, I've had lots of mentors or guides in my life, and the ones that take the time to be like, we're going to stick to these things, this protocol, because, say for one of my guys I met through the Mountaineers, and he does a lot of avalanche assessment, and he's become a guide later, and he was my favorite instructor because he was more like Socratic, like, what do you think about this or that? What do you see here, this or that? But he was always like making sure, like, the point was, as you're getting to each level, is doing that Socratic method, like, okay, what do I see here? What's this thing? What is the snow level? What if I test this or that? What do I need to think of? What's the angle here, this or that? All those little things, like, and he taught me a lot from just having that. Hello? Yeah.
Hey.
Come on in. We're in a podcast here. No, it's just us two.
Okay.
Yeah. Can I try it on?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, thanks for
It's a
coming
little
by.
small for me. That's the whole reason it's
We'll see.
getting out of here.
I just need it because I'm going to... Oh, that'll work.
Yeah. And it's got the whole thing comes up. I don't know if you saw
Yeah, that's
this
why I
one.
liked it, because I've never... Is it just,
I know. I got one just like it. It was just a little
Is
bit.
there a button to release it?
Yeah, right here on the chin. It's a little.
This?
Yeah, and then you lift up.
This...
Yeah. If you don't mind.
Oh, okay.
There you go. Just
All
like that.
That?
Whole thing comes up.
Yeah, that'd be nice. I have the dirt bikes at Mount Baker Motorsports. I ride it off road, but I also can do it as a dual sport. I need
Yeah.
something where it's quiet, and I'm going to go into
That'll be.
traveling the country.
It's got
Yeah.
a little shade on it, and the vents open and close.
Sweet. What did I say on the phone?
40's fine.
40?
Yeah. Yeah, it's just a bit too small for me.
No worries. What do you ride?
I got an old Moto Guzzi 70 something.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I'm looking for a little dirt bike too. If you know anybody.
See that green one right there? Right there?
Yeah.
You know, El Capitan's?
Okay.
And he's wanting to get rid of it. He's using it today.
Okay.
Yeah,
He works there?
he owns it.
Oh, okay.
He's the captain.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
The girl I dated, I helped her get that bike, and then he sold it, and he's a friend of mine. And so he's now ready to let go.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, man.
When I go on the trip, I want to have two sets of wheels, and one's more for the road, dual sport. And so what we've learned is when you're riding that way, with the dirt bike helmet and the visor and it's open face, it's loud. This is like $40
Yeah.
and it's quiet. So anyway, yeah. So
So we can jump back in. I don't know where we were.
we're at just Jason Spear. It was the guy who kind of it just didn't remind me of law school in the sense of think about. And law school is all about. There's no, like, my first year was like in brain fog, but it's like, because I grew up where like binary and like multiple choice stuff, and I did great. It's like it's this or this, it's this or this or this. It's and even the bar exams like that. There's like it gets down to this minute little specific thing, but in the real world, you're like, well, like is murder, basically, is that a wrong thing? And you're like, oh yeah, it's horrible. I'm like, well, what about this? And so the professor will call you up, and you're having to, whatever position you take, he's going to argue another.
Yeah.
But really, what it is to think about before you just go down and pick one thing. You're like, what else can be happening here?
Yeah.
And it applies in all sorts of things. I just happen to be, my first experience of it was in law school, but when I was doing the Mountaineers, and the way Jason approached it was always stuck with me as far as other, like even riding dirt bikes. Just the same, like things happen in the mountains on the dirt bikes. So you have to have that same attitude. It's like, okay, let's think through all the scenarios here before we decide, you know, can I do that? Oh yeah, I'm capable, but is this the right time to do it? You know, what are these things, or how do we, you know, thinking about like, okay, we got a group, how are we going to stay in contact? You know, we're going to be in the woods, like what's our protocol? You know, all these, just thinking through all the scenarios that if you take them into account, then you have a full picture that makes your, you know, your approach, or you know, your goal when you're trying to get this goal, go have fun and do these things in the woods or the mountains or whatever else you're applying, is that you have this full picture, so you're less likely to be surprised with some weird thing happening that gets you. Like if you plan, as my friend Garth is Mountaineer like I was, it's like we carry all the 10 essentials you would climb if you're climbing a mountain, you know, on the dirt bike, because stuff happens, and I've seen it happen multiple times, and it's happened to me, you know, and it's like, oh, you need to have your first aid kit, you need to have these other things, you need to have a way to tow somebody else's bike out, you need to have, you know, because you could be way out there, and I had to tow, you know, I had to get towed down the mountain like 15 miles when I got a nail in it, and it went not just through the tire, but I had this other thing where it's like tubeless, like there's another, it's like a street, like a road bike tire, but it's red, and then there's another tube inside of it, but it went, so if you get a flat on the outside, you can just put a plug in it and pull it back up. The nail was like this long and it went all the way through, so there was no way to repair it. So these guys, we're called the Motorcycle Brain Trust. There's all these older guys who've been riding, and they pulled out these zip ties like, you know, 3 feet long, and they carry them because just for that situation, if you get stuck, you can zip tie around the tires, you know, and the rims, so it doesn't come off. So as you're going down, at least you can keep the tire on and you're not on your rim. And just those little things, like, you know, thinking through, oh, I'm just going to go ride a dirt bike. Oh, but it's like, where in life is that? And so I endeavor to, when I'm going into anything, you know, I'll just focus it on outdoors, because that's what I like the most. And a little bit tougher, and when I was a lawyer, it was different when that was my job, but yeah, it's just having that approach and try to take the time to slow down and think it through in advance, you know, and it works. Like, you know, I broke my neck, and it was like not long after I had the neck brace off, I broke my arm on a simple ride with some friends. But man, those guys, when they came back, you know, they all had this, they were fighting each other how to get my arm in a sling, you know, and getting things done and making sure I had what I need, and finding a way to get the bike out. And it was like, but they were already ready. Like it was just like, boom, we know what to do. We have the stuff. And so what could have been me walking back 8 miles on trails, they're, you know, on one guy's bike, my arm is here, and 2 other guys are leapfrogging my bike all the way to the end, and just having that, you know. So I guess my core values would be is, you know, and it's, you know, my ideal. I always say there's ideal and reality. Like my ideal is to be prepared, you know, be like you're a Boy Scout or something, but being prepared, think it through. Because, you know, in order to have fun, you gotta be ready, and a lot of it, I would say.
That's interesting. In order to have fun, you gotta be ready. What if you're not ready? What do you experience?
Well, I think it's if you never can always be guaranteed fully prepared.
Right.
But if
you're convinced that you're prepared versus you're convinced that you're unprepared.
Well, if you're prepared. When I say it's more fun, is something that can be preemptive from creating something ever happening, versus, so for example, when I first started riding with Garth, and none of those guys my son's got these things where you can talk to each other
Yeah.
with your helmet on these pack talk things, and it's great that, you know, none of those guys really use it yet. Before it was always like if you're riding on trail, you know, and there's a group of us, you know, and you get to an intersection, if somebody's behind you, you stop. You wait for them to get there, because otherwise they could just go this way when everybody's going this way, and then all of a sudden you don't know where this guy went and he doesn't know where you went. And then if you're, you know, somewhere where you're way out there, you know, trying to get back or caught back up could be a mess. Walker Valley is not quite so bad. And so, you know, just following that simple rule, you know, and, you know, I've been, you know, struggled the past couple of months with my brain stuff. So I had a couple of times where I'm riding with him and I hadn't ridden so long, I wasn't with the group, and they would just kind of, these guys have been riding every Wednesday with each other, and so they said, we're just going to go here, and they would just take off, and I got behind a little bit, and I don't know which way they went. And it was okay because I knew my way down, but it was more of like, you know, even then you get so comfortable with each other that it just takes, you know, you're not, one person behind you doesn't follow, and then it takes, you know, it can turn into 3 or 4 hours of trying to fix it,
Right.
versus
Taking the extra 2 seconds to verify.
yeah, this is how we're going to do it.
Yeah.
This is how we're going to do it, you know, and it's just simple. So, you know, it's safe. It's also somebody could, you know, when I broke my arm was, you know, I'm just riding down a logging road and something else. I was in the bushes and the guy went past me, he didn't see me. But when they got to stop, it was like 20 minutes before someone said, "Where's David?" You know, and like before they came back, you know. Fortunately, it wasn't, you know, that, you know, it was only that long, but you know, that could have been like, you know, what if it was worse? What if I was like really, really, really hurt? What if I couldn't have crawled out of there? What if it was my neck again or something? You know, and so I guess when this just reinforces in me as we're having this conversation of, you know, I guess that kind of curated my core values just come out as telling these stories where how this, you know, my approach to things has shifted because of circumstances and how important it is. And you know, when you're, I hung out with the screw-ups in high school. Like, they're the ones that like me, you know. And there was like, oh, fuck it, you know, whatever we want, you know. You just think, you know, and you get older and you realize it's like, yeah, I want to have fun, and it really sucks when you have something go wrong because you didn't prep, you know, and then it's no fun, you know, and it's, people can die, like people can get hurt, you know, really quick, and you know, it's just so I'd just say for that, and I think about that in many other places, like now working out, like at terrain. You know, we've had this conversation about the core, and like when I finally learned how to access my core way later than I should have, but it's like everything I do now is I'm approaching it with that first, like this first, and working on this, and it seems simple, but it's like this leads to safety here. Like I can now squat without worrying. I can do deadlifts, or I can do these other things, or even in yoga. Like it's just like having this, like if I do this, if I'm conscious of this when I'm going into this, is I'm pretty much gonna be okay. But if I'm ignoring this little thing, you know, it could be I'm in back pain for a year. You know, and, so
that's why I have this podcast as what are your core values. That's and that, I mean, you're talking about the human body, but figuratively the core values that you adhere to yourself. That's how you can make those binary decisions, since all the logic always comes back to that core. You know, that's how you can make gains in your arms. The strength is connected all the way back to your core.
Yeah,
all ties back
I'll
in.
tell you, since I've told you a story about doing the Huberman thing, but you know, I was always a chubby kid, and I lost a lot of weight my junior and senior year of high school, and then college I started running a bit, and I was, trim. Maybe I was a little more cut, but now I'm like, and I wasn't trying to do this, but it's like, but I'm focusing so much on core and the when I eat now, and it's like, geez, I'm 55 years old and looking at myself and like I never looked like as much as I do now to me, but it's more, and it's great, but it's like you were saying, I'm not doing any of this stuff, but my biceps are getting big.
Yeah, it all just,
It's like all these things come into play when you use this, and then you can lift more. Like when I was doing the deadlift the other day, it's here, but when you're having to hold that thing, you're
right, exactly.
You're doing this,
and everything's connected efficiently if you've got your attention on the right core variables.
Yeah, I wish I had learned more about this earlier. I started working. I was always physical. Like my mom, when I lived in Houston, when I was growing up, before we moved to Cleveland for 3 years, they had a local pool, and you could join the swim club. And I learned to swim as like a toddler, but that's when we first properly learned, and I progressed pretty quickly. I was never like a super swimmer, but I was just good. But it was more like, even at that like 6, I would get myself 7 years old, get up early enough and walk to the pool and do my workout with the swim team. And that was kind of already like, that's something I wanted to do, like from an early age. Like I want to be doing something of movement. It's just always things in life kind of get you sidetracked from it, but I say all this in the context of, I wish it was like in my 50s, or right around 50 when I really got this thing here, like all this time I could have it would have been different, but it's
better late than never.
It makes it fun.
Yeah.
It makes it fun. Like I would be like, I'd look at, when I was a chubby kid in high school, so it was like when I remember going back to my 10, especially my 20-year reunion, it was like all these guys that, they were, athletic and this, and then I see them like, they just, and I'm like, and the girls that would never pay attention to me were like, oh, Dave, we come over here now, and it's just, but I guess what I'm trying to get is like at 55, I'm like, I'm not trying to prove anything, but I'm like, God, I feel pretty happy, like, having yoga and learn these other things, and I can stay fit and do these things at this age, and feel pretty good about it. I'm not trying to beat anybody there. I just want to be.
Just be yourself, Say your own standard.
Just enjoy what you get, and that was, when I took over the Bikram studio here.
I wanted to segue next into Bikram.
Yeah.
So let's start that segment now.
Yeah. So I would say, I'll jump way kind of to the end, real quick. Is I never thought I would do yoga, but long story. We'll get to the whole story of that. But I had 2 of them in Dallas, and everybody was dropping the Bikram name at that point when we moved up here, and I've been here for a couple of years and just kind of teaching a little bit over there, but trying to do something else, and they were going to close, and I ended up taking it over, and so I wanted to have a name, and I was trying to think. My wife wasn't involved, and I'm like, what? One was I need to find a .com. That was like the first thing, and I let the students maybe pick, but it was like, it kind of hit my, I don't know how it came up. It was like so. The word, it was maybe a defined thing is like it was Be Real Yoga, realyoga.com, but it was more of.
Do you still have that domain?
I may still have it. I may still be paying. I don't know if I pay for it anymore, but I definitely have, like, the logos are still out there floating around. We just somebody let somebody take over our FitBiz Consultants name just recently. That me and some other friends started up here, but it was really, like, especially coming from living in Dallas for so long, there's this image. Like it's just people want to be like, look at me, look at this thing,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and they feel like, they go, I got to be. I have to have this to be, or I have to act this way. I have to be this thing to be accepted or whatever.
Right.
And my learning over time is just like, just be real. Like, just be who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Like, trying to be somebody else. Trying to
Right.
put on this front, and it's like, just be you.
Mm-hmm.
Just accept who you are when you're truly authentic and yourself. That's when people respect you.
Yeah.
It's not trying to be this or saying, if I got it, or even in yoga, like we'd have these, we call them the hardcores. They show up every single day, because they feel like I have to do this in order to be, and I'm
Right.
like, it's like, why?
Mm-hmm.
Like what? It's just, is this something that you enjoy? Like, yeah, if that's something that gives you pleasure every day and you really enjoy it, great. But if you're trying to do this to whatever, to
Yeah.
like,
I have this idea that like the concept of should is imaginary, right? Like everyone's always like, oh, I should train yoga every day if I want to become a high level yogi. I should lift weights every single day and eat a protein shake right afterwards if I want to have gains in the gym, But I don't know. There is no should. It's just like I think you ought to just.
yeah. I mean, there's you see all those videos, these guys going hardcore. I mean, I told you the story of my friend Joseph, and it was interesting. Like, I love, because I still see him online and connect with him. Is like, he busted his butt, and he worked hard, but it was never this thing of like. It didn't come from this place of, I have to do this to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
It just happened. It was like, for him, it was a gift to be able to touch his fucking knees, and to be able to have that happen, and then to be, where he came from in a really rough part of Dallas, in a really dysfunctional family.
Mm-hmm.
His dad was gone, and to be able to go out and like, it changed his sister's life, his brother's life. It's like, it was more of like, look how this yoga has changed my life, and he's dedicated to it, but not in a, I mean, he did win these things, but it was just more of a expression of, wow, what a gift I've gotten from this.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's just different ways of that. There's, even in the yoga thing, there's this somewhere competitive, like they're trying to be better than the others versus, I guess it's, it's okay to be, Bikram will say this thing is, and it's like, it's not what you do, it's how or why you do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the values behind it.
Yeah,
that's what's going to drive the long-term results.
It's not what you do. He'll say it's how you do it or why you do it. But really, is those two are depends on what you're looking at here. But so I don't know. For me, for yoga, I guess it was, I was physical. I mean, I started running in college just because I gained all that beer weight like the first year, and then I got sober after my first year of college for about 5 years, and I started running, and I was bigger, but I just was so, for me back then it was just shame, like I was a fat kid and I didn't want to be that, and I just lived this thing of insecurity that the girls didn't like because of this or that. So when I ran and got in shape, I thought then I would be accepted, but I still felt uncomfortable. And long or short, but I did that for a long time, and I don't know where I'm trying to go, but yoga, I just wasn't on my radar. I had a friend, the same friend, I'm going to visit on my way back to Texas. Went to high school together, and she was living in Colorado, and she's like, oh, I'm doing this yoga, going to yoga, and I'm like, yoga? Like, tree hugging, whatever, things or that, and I just was, there was something in my mind, and one of my friends had law firm I was in, I've told you the story. I was in John Marcoux, and he's like one of those people that you hate but you love at the same time. Like he won the genetic lottery. You know, he's brilliant. He's very athletic. He's very charismatic, and he's a super nice guy, funny, just like all the things, you know. But he was lazy because things went for him. It was always easy, you know. So he really didn't put a whole lot of effort into it. In fact, remind me to give you have those books, the two of his as well are in there. But you know, he dated some girl from across the country, and I think she gave him the Pegram book, and then this couple opened one in Dallas. It was the first one in Dallas. There had been one other in like Houston, and so he started going, and then another guy, Mike, who was a client of my section at the firm, so I got to know Mike. He worked for Bank of America, and I introduced him to John, and so they became friends. But I've realized in my life is my purpose is I'm the guy that introduces this one to this one, and they all go on to have this lifelong thing. I just happen to be that. It's not me. It's just I just happen to have like that's what it is. But anyway, John started like I gotta get the yoga and tantra. Let me come in after this. So he was like making this effort, which I never saw. So I was kind of intrigued, and they're so, you know, they, you know, so I went to go to a class, and they're like, oh, you're never gonna make it through the first class. I'm an aerobic animal, like and I got through it, but it was like, you know, and I was like, yeah, you know, I like it okay, and after I'd done it a couple of times, and the studio was this, at the time it was one before they moved over, but it was like, basically it was like, the reception area was like this big, if this much at all, and there were two curtains. One could hold 3 women, and this curtain could hold 2 men to change clothes. And you went into the yoga room, and that was it. And there was like, right at the back, there's a little cut open. There was like a toilet and sink. That was all there was. And nobody really used the regular, like yoga mats. No one really had yoga mats. Yoga mats were used baby crib mats. You knew if you got the ones with the duckies, you were lucky. And it was just, you know. But anyway, I took a class, and I got out, and I'm sitting there. It's just me and Denise, who's the owner, and she's very intense and very aggressive, and I love her to death. And she's like, well, what are you doing? And I'm like, what do you mean what I'm doing? She's like, well, what are you doing here? And I'm like, well, I'm just doing yoga. I was like, well, what's your goal? And I'm like, I don't know. She says, well, what else do you do? And I'm like, well, I go to the Y, I do a little bit of running. She says, well, how often do you do that? And I go, I don't know, like, you know, maybe 4 times a week. Well, how about, why don't you just do as much as you do all those other things, and just do that here. Just do this for like a month or 3 months. Just do this and do nothing else. It's not going to hurt your running. It's not going to hurt your. It's not going to hurt your. You know, your whatever else I was doing, going to the gym. You'll be okay. And just do this only for like a month or 60 days or 90, whatever. There's this challenge. And I go, okay. Okay. And I stopped drinking during that period of time, and it was like, within a couple of weeks, it was like something opened up, and it got me in connection with this part of myself, this spiritual self that I had lost. It was like this memory of being a young kid, that there was this feeling, you know, I don't know, whatever is there or whatever, I don't know, but there was just this thing that I like, wow, where did that come from? Like, I lost this. It just feels good to have this. So I just kind of got addicted to it, you know. And then my 2 buddies, you know, told me, they were like, hey, we're going to quit our jobs. We're going to go to this teacher training in Los Angeles and, you know, become teachers and go open a studio somewhere. And Mike was very entrepreneurial, and John was very charismatic. And so they went, and them telling the stories of like being in Vegas and all this stuff. And I hadn't really, or in Los Angeles, and I hadn't really gone many places at that point in my life. Like, and they're like in LA and all this going on. And I was like, oh my God, that sounds amazing. And then they came back and stayed with me for a couple of days and hearing all the stories. And then they left to go try to find a city that hadn't had a Buckner studio. This was early days. and then 9/11 hit, and it kind of slowed him down. But I think it was like the next year, a year after that, somewhere around there, I got sent up there for business for a week, and they just were opening.
Where were they?
In Wicker Park, Chicago.
Okay.
Yeah, they looked at other places. So they're, it's just one of those big loft type spaces, commercial space. You go in, it's just this big open space, and they had created a yoga room with the walls and the heater room there. And then there's this lobby that's ginormous. It's just open, and Mike's got this tent, and he's sleeping in the corner. He's got this tent there, he's sleeping there. And John, there's like some stairs from inside the loft that go up to the roof, and so there's like a little cove underneath the stairs, and he's sleeping there on a futon, and all they had was 2 sinks, and a toilet, but no shower, so they go to this Russian spa, every couple of days, get cleaned up, and I'm like, this is fucking awesome, and I just like, I want to do this. And long story short, I just kept saying, I'm gonna go to training, I'm gonna be a teacher, I don't know how. I have no idea, I just kept saying it. Some girl said, well, just say it, just put it out there. And I was like, okay, whatever, okay, I'll do that. And I just kept saying it, and I'd go travel on deals around the country, and I'd go take a class at some studio there, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go to training. Like, where are you going? I don't know yet, but I'm gonna go. And one day I got a call from the owners of the Dallas studio, and they said, hey, would you like to meet us for lunch? We'd like to meet you for lunch. It's like, okay. And at the time I was worried because they were gotten to be so bad, like just so militant and hardcore. It was, we're all talking about like, oh God, they're gonna come at me like I'm saying something. And I met up at this Whole Foods and get some food. We sit down outside, and Todd, the husband, prick, he's like, so we have this. He's a prick. We have this amazing opportunity for you. And I go, oh. Amway? You know what Amway is? It's this multi-level marketing thing. It was like such a big thing back in the 80s, 90s, like where they get you to buy in, whatever. And I was like, it's a fucking Amway. Like, I've had that approach. And no. It was like, you want to take over this? Just kind of, yeah. And I was like, and so, and so it kind of worked out where it worked out, but it was, I could go all day on about all that because it's just there's so many. I could spend days telling stories.
What's the gist of it? Like, so you took over that studio.
I would say the gist of it is, I met my second wife there, the love of my life, and we left. She just had a different path. After 15 years, and anyway, it was wonderful. I mean, I had some tough times early on, but I learned a lot. I would say if I would give you the highlights of it was, I never really managed people before. I had worked as an attorney. I'd worked in burger joints. We didn't have like that leadership skills, and I was still I didn't get sober until later, it's like 2007. So there's back and forth, still drinking and partying some, and that kind of screwed some things up along the way. But I guess the biggest thing I learned from that studio and having the studios was this such a shift in my life, and things, so many things unexpected, and it was, from a broad perspective, I can tell you, it was like the most amazing job in the world. Like, it was just an amazing, it was like 15 years, I loved it, I loved it. There were times that were hard, but I mean, overall, I was like, gosh, I love this. I still love the yoga, I love teaching it, and I got to meet people from all over the world, and they knew us from all over the world, and I taught, many times where I taught the trainees, it'd be like 400 to 500 people, and up on a podium, like way up here, and they're just, I'll show you pictures, but the things I learned from it was, I would say, the one thing I would say on that, just from a pure life lesson in life, but also like for approaching something, is we had took over the studio from the original owners. It was just like, Denise is gone, so it was struggling a bit, and we were trying to get through it. And then I went to training, so I was gone, and it was screwed up on how it was just dysfunctional. Like when I bought the studio, I really wasn't eligible yet. They just changed the rules, and it got really messy. And with Buckner, it got messy, and that's a whole other fun story. But it just kind of. And then Karen came down, and so she started helping, and then I had to go back to work because it just wasn't making money.
As an attorney.
Yeah, so I went back part-time, and they're paying me good money for just coming in 4 days a week. And she's trying to run it, and it's just not really doing great. It's like, and I was, at that point, I was, I had taught and ran the studio for years. I went back to being a lawyer part-time, and then trying to do this part-time, and I was just fucking up. Like, I was doing worse as an attorney than I ever had, and I'm not getting much business, and I'm just like more miserable, and I'm making mistakes that seem like stupid, but it was like, and then the studio's like not doing well, and it's like, oh my God, and it was just like, I'm gonna get through this. And we were on a call with another studio owner who owned a studio like about 20 miles away, just kind of in between Dallas and Fort Worth. And she's, to this day, like one of my best friends ever in the world. We're still great friends. And we were doing all kinds of like self-transformation type things, like landmark form and these other type stuff. So we're into that as well, growth and things. And Karen and I are on the phone with Stacy. So there's three of us on the phone, and we're talking about, it's like, everything. It's like, it's what you like creating things to happen and how we focus on things, and everybody has their equally subjective realities. Like, we all can experience the same thing, but we see it in different ways, and how that can lead to families not talking to her forever because they saw it as this and they saw it as just this how you look at it. And it was with the studio, going through this concept of it's like Stacy says, it's like the universe does not distinguish between wants and don't wants. It gives you what you focus on. So whatever you focus on, whether you're focusing on it because you don't want it to happen, you might as well just invite it in the door. It's like, it's what you focus on. So if you're focused on your fear, that's where it's going to go. And so as we're having this conversation, and I'm like, Karen's over here, but she's on her phone, Stacey's on the phone, and I'm going, fuck, I got to quit my job. Like, Buckner has a saying, it's like, it's like, you got to focus, it's like if you have your feet in two boats, you split and you fall on your asses in the water. You got to focus on one thing. And I was like, holy shit, I'm trying to do these two things, and neither one of them is working out.
Right.
They're both worse than they were before. And I'm like, fuck, I have to quit my job. And
How did you know that it was your job that you go, not yoga? Like, was it?
Oh, I had to quit my legal job.
I know, but why was that clear to you that it was that was the one that had to
when
go?
we were having that we were on that call, and it just hit me like a burning bush thing. I don't know. I try not to be too woo-woo, but some things are just, there's people I do believe at some level there's just like something there. I don't take it to extremes like others, but it was just like this thing of like, you gotta quit your job. That's what you're doing. You're trying to do these two things, and your focus is here, your focus is here, and neither one's working. And I'm like, oh God, I don't know how I'm gonna tell Karen I gotta quit my job. Oh shit, I'm gonna have to tell her I quit the job. And so we hang up the phone. 2 minutes later, And then she looks at me and goes, "You need to quit your job." And it was like, whoa. And then it was like, whatever it takes. And so we sold my house, we moved into a rental house. It's like, whatever it fucking takes. And it was like, if we have to move in to the studio like John and Mike did, whatever it fucking takes, we're going to do it. And just that intention, that like willingness to whatever it takes. It was like there was this shift, this surreal or whatever it's called. It's like putting something out there like this is like we were locked in. This is how we're gonna. Then everything just got easier. All of a sudden, we're making money. All of a sudden, more people are coming in. Our attitude was different. Like we were focusing on not like the shitty young teachers we're having to teach. It's like, what do we need to do to be better in these things? And over time, we just kept evolving to get better and better. And so we ended up, we did really well. I mean, we were known. Got a lot of people from all over. And like Mind Body is your Mind Body. They're like
is that the app that?
Yeah, so it's been around since like OhmSoft. I mean, I did this OhmSoft, and it was just you had to download. You got the kit, and then put it in your computer. And
for anyone watching, it's just really good a platform for you.
Yeah, so we worked with them over the years, and we were like, the lady that kind of headed up with us, just like, you guys are doing better than most in the studio in the world under Mind Body. Like you're like up there in the, So that was pretty good.
And what do you think that was? Do you think it was just like you and Karen were aligned on this is what we're doing, we're going all in?
I'm not a great businessman, and that ADD kind of affects. But it took us some time to realize what strengths are each, and it came down to she's a grinder. She could sit at her desk all day and and I can't do that. But she's like, she's doing and I'm like, but to what point? Like, you're spending all this time, but like, what are you trying to achieve? Like you're just doing this thing, but where is the goal? Where are we trying to go? Like, what's our objective?
You're more the macro, she's more the micro.
Yeah, and so I was like, I could see there's something, I can just see things from this bigger perspective so much easier. I don't know why. It's just I can just see it, like I can feel it, and so I was able to like, okay, these things, and so I was able to have these ideas like, okay, look, why are we struggling with teachers, and we're in realizing what we need to shift, like how we are, like we were having these teachers would come in and they would like, onesies, twosies, they teach, and then they wouldn't show up, or you couldn't, like, it was like all over the place, and you couldn't have consistency, and you realize it's like, it's like, why are we keep having these problems? And it was like, well, in every one of these problems, we're the problem.
Yeah.
What are we doing? What are we doing or not doing that's creating this situation? Because it's us, and so it's realized like, okay, we're just letting them pick and do whatever they want, and then we're not kind of creating anything for them. So it kind of came to the realization is like, what do we need? Consistent teachers. What do we want? The ones that are on board about what we're about. Like they're about what we're about. And how do we change that? And it was like, we need to put that out there. So we had a meeting with our teachers. Okay, we're shifting things, and that we're not getting rid of anybody, but going forward is we're going to give priority to teachers who are committed to teaching the most classes a week. So if you're willing to teach, 8 classes a week, which is kind of near the top before it's too much, then you get first priority. You get to pick which classes you're going to take.
Gotcha. Okay.
And
teachers train. I use the word train, but they practice with the group, right?
Not in the group.
Not in the group.
Not in the group. You're up there. You're on a podium teaching the whole time. Okay. Yeah. You're not teaching all. Maybe some demonstrations, which is not me. I could show the whole thing, but it's more a dialogue that we use, but also which kind of frees you up to have this rhythm that goes with the class, and then know. But it's also then you can like,
Yeah.
I'm able to like, you know, Jake, you know, suck your stomach, one more here, or, you know, this or that, whatever. It's a little quick thing as you're going over those.
Why is 8? And I'm just this is kind of taking you off your narrative, but why was 8 around the limit? I'm just wondering. As
It just it's once you get past it, it can get it's you're doing 90 minutes in a hot room, you know,
Okay.
and if you're doing that a lot, you get pretty burned out. I mean,
Okay.
we just found like some people, some of these hardcore teachers, they'll be teaching like, especially in a bigger city, they may be teaching 13, 15 classes
Yeah.
a week, but it's not sustainable.
Yeah.
You know, you get burned out. They're not as in tune with these people. So we're like, it wasn't like I said you couldn't go over 8. I'm like, if you want to go where you can, but you have to, your level of performance, your level of awareness, and your energy has to be there. If you are one of those people that can do that, awesome. And there were a few, you know, but it was more about, you know, giving them, like, then it was like, once you say, if you're committing to this amount, we're going to give you priority, then all of a sudden like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And that gives me, I can start planning things.
Right.
And so I'm going to commit. And so all of a sudden you don't have, like, there was this one teacher, fuck man, she's married to one of my friends later. She would always say, I'm going to do this, and then she would change. And it was always like, and then, or like, oh, I want to be gone. You know, I'm going to go work with this studio once a week, every month, you know, but still expect full classes. And I'm like, why are you going down there? You know, they're not going to teach you anything that we're not going to teach you, and then now you want us to try to fill this. So I was like, nope,
Yeah.
nope,
Mhm.
nope, nope. You can do this or that.
Mhm.
You know, but what it did is it eliminated all this crap.
Yeah, and then it gets back to what you were saying earlier, that it's, you can really do this, then that, or that, you know, it's like you kind of...
Yeah, and then
Follow
you're
the
attracting
concept.
people that are about what you're about.
Right.
And they're about, like, and you have this, there's this, it gives this ease to them because they have this, okay,
Mhm.
I know we're not playing any games, like, just basically here's where we're at, you know, and you know, and if once opportunities open up, great, and you want those, sure,
Mhm.
you know, and of course, you know, if there's times you need to go on vacation, this or that, absolutely, you know,
Mhm.
not a problem, we help each other out.
Yeah.
You know? So that was like one big thing of just how we, you know, started with that. That was a shift, and then it was, you know, and it was more about like, we want people that are about what we're about, like here's our values, who we are.
Mhm.
And so all of a sudden when you start to, that shift of how we just basically giving them their classes or these things, it was all of a sudden it shifted like the people that we were having the most problems with, they just left. Like,
Yeah.
we didn't have to say goodbye. They just like, once they got, we had this like calm, you know, like non-drama type way of like doing it. We're not getting rid of you, but here's how we're going to do it now. Then the ones that caused the most trouble, they just left.
Mhm. Was your studio a good place to work, like in terms of compensation and?
Yeah, as much as you can. It's hard with the yoga studio. When we,
Yeah, I mean, not just compared to other yoga studios, not compared to other career paths.
I think we're market. The people that bought it from me, they're great. I mean, I was so glad that they took it over. In fact, they were poised to handle COVID. And, you know, Jeff, he was like some kind of business guy in New York, you know, he's from China originally, but super nice. But they were humming, like they're in a whole different level of that. So they always had so much energy of like, and resources, and they had money, so they could afford to get these things set up so that they could keep going, which we just weren't there. So I think they could pay their teachers more than we could, and we were also teaching, you know, a lot ourselves versus, you know, that part I would say, I never really did business school or anything like that, so I didn't have the experience. Karen was a manager. I kind of towards the end before we moved, I went and took some courses over at SMU, where I went to law school, on entrepreneurship and things. But I was trying to, I need
Yeah.
got up my game here, like how can we shift, but then it just kind of moved on. But, you know, for who we were, you know, I mean, Buckner had trainings twice a year, they're all 9 weeks long, and people come from literally all over the globe to come to that training. So when I went, it was like 230 people, and the last training I went to was like 500 something, you know, and I learned early on was like from when somebody said, another studio owner, a couple, they said, go back to the trainings, go back to the trainings, go back to the trainings, you know, because that's how you're gonna find your teachers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's how you're gonna get people.
Okay.
And then they kind of get to know you, and so I started doing it, and then so I help out at posture clinics, because you have they have to do class twice a day, so 90 minutes each, and then we have a lecture. But during the day it's like posture clinics, so you get break up in your groups, and there's 26 postures, 2 breathing exercises, and you have to learn the dialogue for each. So you got to practice that. So we'll go through that whole thing, and it's like and so I'd have a group of because we, you know, maybe 20 at a time or 30, because there's a bunch of them going through that same thing. And the teacher come back, and they would have to say the dialogue for that, and then we'd give them feedback on where you memorized it right, what your energy is, all those things is like teaching them, giving them, and the longer I did it, it's like give more creative things that were useful, and then having less, and more understanding about, because it was such a hardcore group of teachers early on, like when I first were, they were like really militant about it, like, oh, you don't know this was that, and they're like being so hard on people, and I was kind of that way at first, and I realized down the road, I was like, because I started with anybody that wanted to go to teacher training from our studio, I'm like, you're gonna do posture plank here first before you go, because you're representing us. And if you already learn it, when you get there, you'll be way above the curve, and you'll be able to sleep at night when your roommate's not sleeping, because they got it. And they're like, and every single one of them, because they were bitching about it, they came back and oh my God, you were right. Thank you so much. It made it so much easier, But that's pretty cool. Yeah, so I learned through that, just doing that, and then shifting to. Like even with me and my own teachers, I said we're gonna take turns into posture. We're gonna teach a class, and we're gonna record it. We're gonna give ourselves feedback. And even me, being the studio director, I've been teaching for whatever. Getting up in front of my teachers and teaching a class, we're trying to say the like one posture dialogue. It's fucking hard. It's like a whole different thing than just teaching. And so that gave me to when I would go back and help out. I'm like, it gave me a different level of. And I tell them, like, this is not real world. This is hard. This part right here is really hard. It'll be much easier when you're out there. And so not harping on them for not knowing it, or it's because you're all gonna fucking miss it. And like, what can I do to help them out? And like certain things just hit me. Like I used to watch The Dog Whisperer. The Dog Whisperer, Cesar Millan. He had this popular show on one of those one of those other stations, but he basically was, each show was like, there's this family in crisis because their dog is whatever the fuck it's doing. It's always something going, and he goes to the house, and he's been working with animals and trainers and stuff for a long time, and so he knew animals, and he'd go in there, and it was never the fucking dog. It was never the fucking dog. Ever the fucking dog. It was always the owners, And so he would, and it was like training them. But he said there's certain things he said like every single time. It was like, he's like, and I realized this is the same fucking thing as teaching yoga. He'd say, dogs are pack animals. Dog are pack animals, they need part of the pack, and if you're not, and they need a pack leader. And if you're not the pack leader, Because you're like, oh, honey, baby, this and that. Then they're going to take control. They're going to try to be the pack leader. And then that's where you have these problems because they don't listen because you're not the pack leader. And it was like, and then how you...
Kind of takes me back to the hierarchy thing you were saying earlier, but in Mountaineering, the importance of just having clear hierarchy.
But it's also, it's, and like the difference between the Bellingham group and the Everett group, where they're and over here it's like calm, assertive energy. You see calm, assertive energy. Be the pack leader. I'm the pack leader. And this calm, assertive energy, you're not yelling at them. And you're not being like this. It's just you're calm, you're assertive, and you're like this. And it's like, that's the fucking exact same thing that we do as teachers. Like, this is how so I would bring that in as like, you know, if you're not the leader, then that's when you're going to get the nutballs coming on and trying to run over you in the show. They're going to cause problems. But if you're like this and you're calm, or if you're trying to be too aggressive towards them, which early days people did, and then you'd have this drama, people coming back. And, you know, it was just more about learning how to, the energy you had to create in this room, and how to create this space where the trainees felt comfortable so they could go up, and then like in our studio was like, and then learning from other, I always had different senior teachers come in from around the country to teach us more, and it was like early days of Bikram yoga. There's something that started with a group of small trainee or teachers that was like militant, and it was like, you know, no drinking water for eagle, and you know, no talking, and like all these fucking rules. And you know, I realized down the road from these other women that have been around for a long time, they're like, do you ever hear Bikram say that? Do you ever this or that? You know, or why do we have these rules? There's this, like, it wasn't really, you know, and Bikram seems hardcore, but I go back and all of a sudden he never says. He never says this. He never does that. He never stops anybody from having water before party time. He's never saying whatever it is. It's like all these little things. And what happens is when you have this structure like that, and then all the students feel like that's how you had to be, and then it would create this drama, like somebody coming in. Of course they don't know. And so it was like one of the teachers says, it's just not a problem until it's a problem. Don't make it a problem. Just have some guidelines. And at first, like my teachers were like freaking out, like, well, we're going to get rid of all that. What? No, they're going to go crazy. I'm like, well, let's try it out. You know, and we'll, like, if it's a problem, it's a problem. We'll deal with it if it's a problem. But if not, we're not going to try to focus on if they're like having water. Or this, if they're really disruptive, we'll deal with something that's wrong. And what happened was, and the students were at first were like the ones that came all the time, because they were like, and they were like, you know, and it took them a while to calm down. What happened is, all of a sudden, all that drama, like people would like, you know, especially visiting students who were doing the wrong thing, and there'd be this confrontation and explode, and they'd walk out. It was just all this stuff, and all of a sudden, it was just like one way, you know, and you're just like, oh, okay, stop trying to control it. Now, if there's something you need to address, you address it. You know, my favorite one would be, I had these two nutball students that came all the time. But they always came, but it was like, Martin was this older guy, he was the dad of some other of our students, and he was like, and he was just crazy and weird, and he wouldn't wear yoga shorts, he would wear his like underwear, like tight ones like this, and he get in the front row, and he's like with a mirror and doing like this, he's like grabbing boobies. I don't know what the fuck it was, you know. And then this other lady, Zuni, she'd be in the back, and she's just like doing something else. She's like the whole other world, you know. And I had a couple times I have them both, and I'm standing up, and I can see the students, and like this, and I was just like, you know, Martin, you know, hey, you know. I said, what are you doing? What are you trying to squeeze out? I just make something fun of them, or like, you know, me and the other teachers, we got a pot going, you know, for who can get you to wear real shorts. You know, we're up to like $300. I'll split the money with you if you put on regular. I'm saying this in front of the whole room, and I'm just like saying, I see what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, I'm not directing it, but I say, I see what's going on, it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then Zuni's over here doing it, and I just say, Zuni, we're on this posture, just Zuni. And, okay. And I'm like, she didn't know anything, but then it's like, it's more like everybody else is just finding ways to I see it, it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
And let's just do our thing. Let's just focus on you. And I mean, there's things like that over time. So that I picked up on, and I don't know, when I was back, I ended up for whatever reason, when I went back to training, I started, first a couple times teaching to the trainees. I just shined at that. Like the bigger the better. I was just like, for the most part.
Is it the same thing with mountaineering, with the more intense instruction?
Yeah,
the more
yeah.
this kind of dials in. It just,
Yeah, and I just, and so it got to where they would, have me come out. They wouldn't pay for my flight, but they would give me a free room, and and I would teach a class or more during that time, and then I did all these classes. So we'd have all these trainees asking to become a mentor with us afterwards. So we had people coming in from Japan, England, Australia, somewhere in Asia, places, just all over, and all over the country coming in to mentor with us for a period of time before they go try to do their own thing. And we were just known as a mentoring studio. And so and then we were always like, if you want to open a studio, just tell you everything you need to know. I'm not going to charge you any money. It's like, what do you want to know? I can show you everything we do, and I'll be there to help you if you have questions. And we get calls from studio owners all over the country, especially when we our first studio, when we expanded it, and then we got this really nice system, and we had all this other stuff going on. It was like, oh yeah, those are the guys. Those are the guys you want to talk to about, And my attitude was like, what do you need to know? How can I help you? And here's my thoughts. It was never. It's just about not trying to monetize it. It's like, how can I be of service? And I mean, that's
making an impact. It seems like that's
it's
making an impact to the students, but then also everyone that they'll impact.
Yeah, and I just happen to get involved with. I've never been like one of those people that goes out and tries to be a leader thing, but it happened a couple other ways in the Beacon community. Like, I could spend all day talking about me and Beacon and those interactions, and they're funny, but I guess it was like one of them stands out was I guess like 2009 or so, 8 or 9, and I was at the training in Palm Desert, and this other teacher, studio owner who's from Bend, Oregon, kind of a weirdo, but because I'm an attorney, and he was like, oh, I'm working with Beacon, they're going to come out with a franchise. And, I don't know if this is going to go okay, so working on the franchise. And so up until then, it's just been like, as long as Beacon says, if you went to teacher training, Beacon approves, you could open a studio, and you never charged. All your teachers had to be trained by Beacon. Right. And so that's his only income was really coming from the trainings. And someone realized, most places would have turned this into a franchise, and so it hadn't been done, so they were trying to do it. And Michael Harris sends me this. He's like, oh yeah, and then because he had been working on it with Bikram, and I guess his brother or something, he had a copy of what it was going to look like, the agreement, and so he sent it to me. And I always looked at it and I go, oh, this is going to be a fucking problem. I mean, there's hundreds of studios around the country. And then further, and I just looked at the thing, this is just a boilerplate franchise agreement. And I knew what the studio owners were like. I said, this is going to be a big fucking problem.
Yeah.
You know, and Bikram's not sophisticated in that way.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, shit. And I knew the kind of guys that was behind it were sociopathic people that followed him. And long story short is when I knew it was coming before it was put out there, I reached out to the studio owners in Texas and said, hey, you know, got wind that they're probably going to put out a franchise agreement that's going to come out and do this. And, you know, I was thinking that maybe we should pull our resources together and hire an attorney to help negotiate it. And they're all like, oh, and they just ignored me. But the next day it came out. And they started calling me and like, oh, okay, I'm in. And then it would be like, can I ask so-and-so from Arizona? Can I ask so-and-so? And it ended up turning into across the entire United States. And it went from like 6 of us to like 200 studios, I think.
Wow.
And I was kind of
You're at the center.
spearheading it.
Yeah.
Mike was there, and it's like it ended up being like having to get these calls, and then it was like we had to have, you know, basically regions. So each region, it was like the only way to do this. And I had an attorney who focused on franchising, so we get on this giant, you know, calls where everybody could hear it, and like trying to go through and explain things to them, like because they're like. I don't have to do this or that, or what does it look like? And I'm trying to, I may have her tell you what these things mean and what's likely to happen. And they all want to do their own individual negotiation. And I'm like, it's not going to work that way. It's like, you know, if we all can come together, so it was like trying to get everybody's ideas and come with that. And, you know, long story short, and at the same time, Bikram wanted to come to Dallas. So he was, during the same thing as this was going on, he was scheduled to come to Dallas to do a seminar. And, oh God, it was just like, you know, to pick him up. It just, anyway, it ended up getting killed because he, you know, once it was going on for a while, he realized that, you know, basically if the studio owners were upset,
Right.
you know, and it wasn't going to go through.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it wasn't like, and really, I wasn't trying to destroy it. I was just like, let's find a way through it. Like,
Yeah.
if this is where it's going to go, let's find a way through it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but Michael Harris is the one. Anyway, long story is that he decided he wasn't going to do it. And he called me on the phone because he was coming to Dallas, and he's like, "Oh, David," and I'm sitting there going, I just had to let that go, Michael. No one told me about this thing. And he's this liar. He's like, Jim Harris, he tell me what is in here. And I found out all my teachers, my studio owners are mad at me, and that just makes me so sad. And now I just don't want to teach yoga ever again. He starts crying, you know. And I'm sitting there freaking out because I'm going. He's talking about Michael Harris, and he's like blaming Michael Harris. And I'm going, I'm the one, like, you know, he gave me this thing, and he was part of it. But I was the one that was kind of started this thing, but I wasn't trying to, you know, kill it or anything.
Yeah.
I wasn't trying. I was just like, here we are. And so I guess enough people had passed the word that Dave was. He knew I was there, but I wasn't trying to. All I was trying to do was like, how can I bring these people together if this is where we're going?
Yeah.
If it, Michael had. Anyway, so he needed someone to be the villain, so Michael. So he's down there. He comes down for the thing and. Pick him up at the airport, me and this other studio, and he starts telling the same story again. And it gets a little better. It's like, oh, I didn't know, and I'm freaking out, thinking, what's he gonna do? And then, you know, it's a long story, but it just, I don't know where I'm going with it all, but it just got. The point is, I felt like, I don't know why I'm not that person, but it's just turned into this like. This is who I am, and I just happened to do that, and ended up not going through. But right after that, the Bikram got an investor, a guy named Tom Barrick, owns some casinos in Vegas, and he was like, you know, we'll invest, but you got to have a real CEO, not like Bikram crazy kind of weirdo CEO. So we brought in this guy named Mark Sachs who worked for Nike and Starbucks. And great guy, you know, and so me and Karen, our studio, and like 4 or 6 others from around the country were selected to come to LA and spend a weekend there going through it, and we're at Bikram's house for lunch or something. And then, you know, and I got to know that guy well, and it was like, it was awesome. He's like, we're going to create it. We're not going to tell lies anymore, and we're going to build something that's, you know, and I got to be part of that before Bikram fucked it up. But it was just like, I don't know, there was something about being able to create something for these other people, you know, to make this thing better. I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with that, but it was just like, I'm not a natural joiner or a natural want to force myself, but in that world it just seemed to happen.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, and Bikram, I have so many crazy stories. You know, I basically walked out of his house when we had this big meeting about it with all these people because he was going to throw somebody out, and I'm okay. I can't do this. I left. Just a couple other people, and I was like, oh shit. And I went back to the training, you know, next training a little bit later, and I was like, oh fuck, he's going to be like, and I thought he wasn't going to be there, and Bikram wants to see it. Like, oh fuck. I walked out of his house, you know, like, you know, because he told Michael Harris, he's like, he purposely invited him so he could throw him out in front of everybody. Oh, wow. And he tells Michael, he's like, I would let Hitler eat before I kick him out, but not you, Nietzsche. You know, he's like, you know, it's just crazy drama. And I'm like, so I was like so afraid. And so I was there in Vegas, and he wants to see him, like, oh God, I was so scared. And he fucking respected me.
Yeah.
You know?
It's funny,
and I wasn't trying to be like, fuck you. It's just like, I can't support this.
Yeah. And
I already kind of mentioned it when he was creating this cockamamie thing, and that's a whole nother story. But, you know, I don't know. I guess what I'm trying to say in that core value was, and it took time to develop, is this is how I think. I just have to go through this whole, it's like, when I started, it was like, when I first started practicing and first started teaching, it was like the high school football coaches in Texas, and it was all like, you know, like really hardcore, and that was my first, and learning over the years of patience and understanding and you know, compassion, and learning how to teach people and how to be of, like, in that community, service. You know, I mean, I have so many great friends around the country. You know, I go to almost any state, and I, you know, like, I can, you know, things have kind of since, you know, we all changed the name. It's kind of not as, it's not quite as tight as it used to be, but it's like, I know people everywhere. Yeah. You know, and they're like, oh, come take class, you know, teach here or whatever. Yeah. You know, but it was more about, I guess it's like, it was just the learning I learned from learning to be a studio owner and a business owner and a teacher, and then being part of this large community of, like, how can I make things better? How can I, and learning more about how I can make it better for them, because, like, it's really, the more you're helping them, the better it is. It's like, it just, you know, there's something powerful about that. And that's what I loved about being a teacher. I loved being able to, you know, give them something, you know, and being away, like, I can, so many people's lives changed doing that yoga. Like,
do you think yoga is like the domain in which you've made the biggest impact? That's what it sounded like from this. I know there's a lot of things we haven't talked about.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, just because it was David and Karen Buckner. You know, we were like, they just knew us. It was like, you know, like, had some, I don't know if I told you the story, like my friend Jeff, he did the White Tours, and another student, they both had the same experience. They're Jewish, and they went to Israel, you know, to go check it out. And then there was a Bikram studio there, and they go in and like, they take class, and they go, where are you from? And they go, Dallas. He goes, do you know David and Karen? It was like, and I was like, you know, and it's not like I'm trying to be a celebrity, but it's just like, it was just being in this
Yeah.
thing, but also it was like, and I'm not doing it for like ego. It's just like I must have done something right that
Yeah.
I wasn't. My goal was never to be this thing. Like a lot of these teachers out there, they wanted to be in the
Right.
inner circle and all these things. And it was this like I didn't want to be in the inner circle. I knew I tried to be just outside the inner circle, like out here, but I didn't want to be that. I didn't need to have any kind of position, any kind of whatever. I was not. That's not who I wanted to be at all, for many reasons. But it was for me. It was just like I'm thinking about now. I was like, oh, I must have done something right.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like done for others. And
Mhm.
I'm naturally narcissistic. I guess where I come from is like it's hard for me to like do that, but you know, and that's kind of my goal now. Like it's where I'm going now back to Texas, and I'm leaving this or that. I have no idea. There's something must be. I need to be called elsewhere. I don't know, but you know, it's just you know, it's what can I give? What can I give? How can I help? I don't need to be stingy. The more you give, the more you get. You know, and that's kind of been my learn from that, and learning how to, you know, put yourself in other shoes. You know, it's sometimes, you know, just understanding like where are they coming from? Why are they so upset? What are they scared of? Like how can it's these things of like trying to think it over here, you know, than just, you know, and you know, that's, you know, it's shifted with my whole life, you know. You know, so, but at the same time, I'm not one of these go join all these groups and nonprofits or anything like that. I just kind of want to just in my little circle.
Yeah.
You know.
It seems like you keep kind of referring to the I called it the abstract intuition, but like your spidey senses, you call it, just the general sense of like where's the path. Seems like you're not going out of your way to find it, but when it comes, you're going all in.
Yeah. I mean, I know. I believe there's something here. I just don't know what. Like, you know, everybody has like, you know, in sobriety they talk about a higher power, and religion is like God or Jesus or this or that, and I call him Howard. Well, my aunt gave me this book called from this lady named Anne Lamott, and she's in her also she talks about higher powers and, you know, it was God, Yue, all this other stuff. It could just be Jim or whatever, Harold, and I was like, oh, Howard. I like Howard. I like Howard, and so I just like I kind of put in a thing of like, and sometimes like Howard, fuck you, you fucking fuck. You know, it's just having something there, you know, to be like so.
It's I have thought about that too. Like it's regardless of what you believe, it's there's a lot of value in having something like an unbiased perspective to refer to in decision making. You know, like to think like what's actually going to help. What's going to make a difference.
What's my course? Where do I need to go? Or
well,
it's
ego aside and what
like,
everyone else wants from me aside. What's
you know, it's having like when I have these. I mean, sometimes just help me whatever. Like I'm not happy with this, but okay, then it just help me get through. Just help me accept it. You know, if that's what it is. Or show me what to do, and sometimes it's just been tougher than others. But there was I just flittered away on that. It kind of went in with, you know, I don't know how these two, but somehow it goes together. Like we were talking about intention earlier, and. So when Karen and I did this just myself too, like had the studios, we would take time every so often where we would sit down and we'd she was had a business degree and she did marketing stuff, so we'd get a big, you know, flip chart and we'd do mind mapping you know, and like this, you know, we go through and just put shit on. This is where kind of, and we just kind of make these goals of just like, this is where we want to be. This just kind of whatever. We just like go through and we just forget about it. And I've done it personally, same thing. And I don't know how many, almost every time when I go back and find it, like it just randomly comes across like, holy shit, all those fucking things that we talked about happened. We didn't really think about it after that.
Yeah.
But there's something there which goes through with this, like whatever you focus on, whatever your intention. So, and even with like, there's something there, like by having a communication with Howard is like trying to like, what intention am I trying to create here, and how am I doing this? If I can't force them to say, you better do this, but it's like, here's my ideal, or here's what I'm shooting for. And if
you define it, you have to define it.
Yeah.
I consider myself first and foremost a writer. Like, I'm a trainer, that's how I make my money. But even with the training, like I think my skills with the writing, like writing the workout programs and then the messaging behind them. But there's something about it. Like, if you take an idea and to clarify, like when I say writing, I'm not necessarily meaning like writing in a notebook or in a Word document. I'm more just meaning like recording and organizing ideas. So like this podcast is to me a form of writing. But yeah, there's something about like there's two parts. It's first recording, and then there's some sort of editing or like working with those ideas once they're done. But yeah, I've had the same thing where I write stuff in a notebook or in any form, and then circle back years later, having never taken the time to go back and read it.
You just come across it and you're like, what the hell?
Yeah, that's like, what? How?
Yeah, it's freaky.
Yeah.
You know, it's freaky, but there's something to it. I don't understand it. I don't know how it works. I don't think. It's just, I just go, okay. If it's meant, you know, something happens, but I don't know. And if it's meant to happen, it'll happen.
Yeah, I think it goes back to the sort of binary decision-making processes you first brought up when talking about mountaineering, where you're saying like it's about understanding each situation, and like if this happens, there's this option, which, and trying to kind of break it down into the binary. And I think it's got to start with like macro. So, and I'm coming from, I like jiu-jitsu a lot. Jiu-jitsu is my hobby, and so there's like 4 or 5 core positions, and then from each of those positions there's like a million nuances. But basically, it's if you're in this position, you want to get to that position or that position. You know, this position's better, that position's worse. So how do you? And then eventually it gets, all right, if your hand's placed at this angle, then this route to that. But yeah, when you've taken the time to record the ideas, you're mapping out those scenarios where when you get to those scenarios, you kind of have that binary map of like this or that, this or that. So I think that the idea of writing or mind mapping or making these lists that we're talking about, I think a lot of it comes back to like preparing. Same way you would for a mountaineering excursion, so that when the uncertainty happens, you kind of have, it's never going to be exact. You're never going to be like, in this situation, this is exactly how it's going to be, and these are going to be the exact options. But if you've taken the time to kind of
create this, what are the possibilities? Like, what are the possibilities I know?
Right.
And what are the avenues that can possibly get me there? Or like, it's like, where do I go from here? Like, this is where I know I want to go. And it's I think having the goal of like, this is where I know I want to go, versus trying to say this is how it's going to be. This is how I have to do it. Like if I say I'm going to take this step, never works. It's like having that general, this is my goal, and taking whatever seems to be showing up. And sometimes it's just you forget, and it just goes that way. So I don't know, some homeless person's going up and down there. I don't know. It's a lot more shuffling than they used to. So yeah, but you're ahead of the game for your age.
Thanks.
You know, it's you got big things coming for you. You know.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
We'll see. It's sometimes I have no idea what I'm doing, but it's just
you're gonna get knocked. We all get knocked on our ass sometimes. Some of us more than others.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's weird how some people, the people that you like the least, nothing ever happens. But you know, it's just it's just like, what can I provide? What can I offer? How can I improve this for that person? That's really what it comes down in acknowledging. That's something I've had to force myself to learn, because I don't come from a family like, oh, what's going on, or oh, what a great this or that. And it's paying attention to these little things with people. I like, especially starting with like being a teacher, is like, the more you notice them and ask questions for them, like the more you ask and tell, the more they provide, it gives you the opportunity to help them, or shut the fuck up because they don't need help. You know, but I mean, you going into this same track. I mean, I just happen to be Bikram Yoga, which you're doing another track of personal service, is what it is, and transformation is, you know, what's the best way. You know, there's, I mean, in two different ways. One are like from the, you know, concrete. Here's are certain things that seem to work and like this, versus the other thing that keeps, where people like, I want to be part of this community, because you may have this great thing, but if they don't like being there, you know, so you got to have those two things. Is like, you know, that's what works, but that's such an important thing, because, you know, people, my experience is, when you're create this space for them and they're comfortable and they like it there, they feel like this is where I want to be, they'll go through the throes of things they're not liking, you know, because they want to be a part of it, and they tell others, you know, versus, you know, some people are like, just from my experience in Bellingham, was with several of the yoga or fitness places, maybe not yoga, but like, you know, where like one or two people show up and like, oh, we're not going to have class because we only had two people. And I'm like, what the fuck? I'm like, dude, like, I already paid my money. And you're like, it's thinking about, put yourself in that position. Like, I got up out of bed, I took my shower, I showed up.
I set my calendar 2 weeks ago according to
the schedule. And I'm here, you know, and I tell you what, there are multiple times where, you know, we didn't, I don't remember we ever had just nobody show up, but there've been, you know, where there's like a few or something's going on, and, you know, I would just tell my teacher, you know, I said, well, we'll give them a choice. Is, you know, we can always give this any of the, like, if it's a low volume, I say up to 5. We'll just say, okay, we'll give you a choice. We can either, like, you know, I'll just teach class like normal, you know. Or since it's so small, we'll just do a silent class, and I'll just lead it. And I'm not going to give any instructions, but we'll just all do it together. But if any of you don't want to do it that way, I'll just teach. You know, so because it's like, it's hard to teach a small class. But the bigger is easier for me. And none of them ever said, oh no, I want you to teach. We'll just do that. But then they had the options. We're still going to have it. Here's some options at the end of the day, but it still can be what you were expecting, if that's what you want.
Same thing you're talking about with Mountaineering, that if anyone in the group at any point wants to turn back, like, we're all turning back together. That's
why
no one's going to be upset about it.
Because we're all coming here this way. Like, we were all of them were coming here for the same thing anyway. I'm offering a different option, but just like that, if one, like, this is what I really want, I want you to tell me how to do it. That's what we'll do it.
And everyone will be on.
And that way, their expectation is great. I mean, these people may have wanted to do a silent class more than that, but, you know, but they were coming in for this anyway. And so it's just more of like keeping that consistency. Yeah, if they know they're coming in, and if you get to where you're managing people, it's like you can do as best you can. Sometimes you just aren't paying attention and you hire somebody that's really not fit and it's really crazy, you know. And I've had that happen a few times, and quicker get rid of them. You know, you just gotta let them go. Because they will get. There's some people that are just. I try to give them the compassionate side, like, well, no one wants to grow up to be this psychotic, crazy, narcissistic asshole, whatever, where they think they're, all there is. They're not going to change. It's just like, but they just need to go. And then like one went specifically, and it was just like so bad. And so like, oh, we're just going to let you go. So why? Well, it's just not working out. Well, what is it I did? It's just not working out. Don't need to get into the drama. It's just not working out.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here. Don't need to get into any conversation about it. That's gonna. The more you can eliminate, and even with students, is like if you gotta. It's can happen where you just gotta fire a student. They're just toxic. Generally over time, you create this energy that it doesn't happen. Like for us later in years, it was like. Early on, we get that drama because people are just subconsciously looking for drama. They'll go in there, they want to create this friction, and then when we react, it's just like, and then so when we over years just stop trying to create a situation, like eliminate that, like we're not going to push buttons. The ones that came in that want confrontation. Even if it's subconsciously, they come one time, and you can kind of I can tell when they come in, like you just get a sense. Just I can look at them like, oh, okay, and they don't come back because that's not what they want.
Yeah.
They just like okay, this doesn't work for them. So that's I'd say because there's so many nuances. There's the teaching. There's running a business, but it's also like making this space. Like, Tanya does a great job. Yeah. She's always asking questions. She's paying attention. Yeah. She does a great job.
I learned a lot from Tanya.
Yeah.
Tanya's the one who runs the gym that I work at. Do trains at for anyone.
Oh yeah. I mean, she's great. When I did Trailhead, Nicola and Derek were great. I really liked them. They did some things, but they did where not enough people showed up, they would cancel. And I was like, and the guy that took over from me, he kind of was following that policy, and so I just didn't go back. And I remember my friend Eric was going, and Eric was telling him, because Eric's a dentist, and he's like, why are you doing it? And I'm like, well, it's only a couple people show up, then I have to, there's not any people, I'm losing money. And I'm like, you're losing money when you turn people around. Well, you have those two, because then they're not going to come back. They're going to quit. They need to know you're here. I think in the period we had the studios in Dallas, I don't know, like except for like a remodel, maybe we closed like a couple times because of like really, really bad ice weather, but we still always had class.
Yeah.
So we just had class, just like we're here.
Yeah.
And I don't think we had one person ever, but it was more like the thing of, okay, they don't have to think about it. There's not this.
Yeah.
But also it's like, but Tanya and others do a better job is like noticing things about them that you can ask them. Like my thing when teaching Buckner class, because always like we get 40. I get 40 plus people in the class, and I don't know all of them. So I would say that I made a goal that I'm gonna say every single person's name in that class.
Yeah, I try to do the same thing.
And when you get like 40 or more, well, when I get to the Bikram's training, I was like, fuck it, there's no way I can I don't know their names, but I would, as they're coming in the door, I would like this, girl coming in, she's short, she's got whatever, and I go, short, SF, short, fat, something red, something whatever it is, or whatever they say, some little thing that I can remember, and then put their name. Your regulars you don't have to worry about, and then as we're getting closer to the time, I can't take down their stuff, and so I would have my desk person print off the check-in sheet for they checked in, and tape it to the to it. It was all
Yeah.
glass, and I picked it up, and so then I would like from that I would see sometimes 50 people. Okay, I remember it hold maybe I can't remember 50, 60 a lot. And then I was like at that point I was like okay, and then it became a game. All right, I know something say everybody's name, but then it was like come down to, and I was like okay, I've gone through my crib list, and then it's like then I get down to I don't know who. Then it's like okay, then the rest of them I don't know who they are. I don't know, you know, but I know they're on the list. And then I would just go, okay, she's Hispanic, older, so she's probably, you know, this name, you know, and this one is that name. And I almost always get it right. Like, but the purpose was saying every person's name, every class. Every person's name, every single class. So they're all acknowledged every single time.
Yeah.
That I see you. I see you. I'm not just saying it, and I'm saying something good job, do this, try this, whatever, positive, you know, way to go, something like that. Just even if it's just something, then they like I see you.
Yeah.
You know, those are. It's different how y'all are because I'm less me here. They're and teaching them. They're all doing this versus going around.
Yeah.
There's something about like trying not to get caught. We had this rule at the front desk. Basically, it was I got a sheet from somebody. It's basically it was like, you know, you can kick me out whenever you want. But things you should say is like, is it why? Is it kind? Is it timely? Is it true? Is it some, you know? Is it necessary? Is it true? Whatever. It's like think before you speak. Are those things necessary? You know. So when you're speaking with people, you know, going through that thing in your head, but really need to tell the story about this or that.
Okay.
And then we had this other rule up at the desk because it's really easy when you have like, so you and I are at the front desk person, I'm teaching, and then we'll just get in this conversation, and these people show up, and you're just ignoring them, and oh, that's not good. So, you know, we have to have this. I forget what the word it was. It was there was some secret word. It was like, no matter what, one person could say. I can't remember the name. It was the name of the thing, but it'll come to me. It was like one word. Anybody could say it on anybody else, and it means we stop that conversation. So
yeah, that's a good one.
You know.
Yeah.
And so even with me, because I would cuss, and it was like, especially with it was just like anybody could say it, and it was just a word that they wouldn't really know, and then we would just stop, and then we just go like that, and then it's like keep the focus on them. No, anyway. All right.
Yeah, you should start wrapping up here.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try real quick to just wrap up some of what you said into an analogy and use the human body since that's what I work with and it came up in our conversation. So you're talking about focusing on the core in your training and how just you've noticed since you've done that everything else falling into place. Your arms getting stronger, deadlifting a lot of weight and all that. And it seems like in your path you've kind of defined your core values at various points. Like for mountaineering, you kind of honed in on like being safe, being responsible, being communicative, and then so anyways, we'll see how this goes. But
you can always edit.
yeah, I generally leave it.
Yeah.
I'll look back and see how it goes in the future, but. It seems like if you've got that core, everything else falls into place. So it kind of helps everything come into these binary decisions where you can make logical decisions that help drive you towards those long-term goals that you've previously expressed, previously decided on.
The core is like what you say is like this, you know, keeping your healthy core is like forget the word or saying the word. It's applicable, you know. We're talking about the core, but it really is. This core, same thing, really is.
It's good to have the physical image to represent the figurative.
This core, by this, it helps all these other things work safely.
Yeah.
And it's like having that core, and this is core strength, but that same core value, that same core strength in other areas.
Right.
That affects all these other things, so your things work out better, it's safer, and you have more more what's growth or movement.
It's more efficient. It's
More
like-
efficient, than you would if you're just like all over the place. But just having that core value of how those things change. So it's like it's like a whatever analogy for core versus core. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. I mean,
And it makes it easy. You can tell, like, oh, I'm struggling in these lifts. I've focused on my core. I know that's good, and so like it becomes a binary thing of, okay, I gotta work on my grip strength or whatever it is, and it's easy. It becomes like this or that.
And I would say, like, even at least for me, it's kind of like the yoga thing. It's a concentration. Is every time I'm doing most of my exercises, some of them over here I don't, it's whatever, but especially at the other place is like, I have to, like, I really have to do this. So it's a discipline every single time. Before I do that, I'm focusing on what in engaging these things, bringing these into place, so it's like it's really a meditation. Meditation is just focusing, on what you're trying to get, just keeping the sharp focus, and it's really just that. It's like as I go in there, I'm like, okay, it's this little thing, like, oh, now I got to. This thing comes in, and feeling this, like all these little things that I'm paying attention to and connecting with, and it's really it's a yoga, like I'm connecting with me, like I'm so alert and aware, and the more I do it, the more I become more aware of these things. And it's the same as if you're with interacting with other people, the more you're consistent about engaging these things, but then learning, the more through that you become more nuanced and being more and more aware of like how you're training these people, or how and how it works out here.
Helps differentiate the signal from the noise. Like,
it just creates this discipline here which applies out there for some. It's just it's a mental thing. But that would, for anybody in the gym, I would say, I mean, the more you can learn this, it really, it's just this discipline of, I'm doing this a specific way because this works, or you learn, or if you're staying so focused in it, you learn even better ways with that, but you're paying attention. And that's really yoga, is this is like focusing on what you're doing while you're doing it. And it sounds easy, but it's not. It's like we had this thing called, we did this metaphysics, and Karen was always in, so it's like, you have to meditate to a candle flame. Where's your candle flame? Where's your candle flame? It's like trying to focus on that one teeny tiny thing. Balancing in yoga postures, it's like, I'm not, but it's like, if I'm not just like, the more you just focus on one thing and it gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, your ability to concentrate on something becomes deeper and deeper as you get more focused in it, and that's the easier you can balance. It's just your body just shifts to that, or your mind. So anyway, told you I'm chatty Cathy. I keep going on all day long.
Well, I appreciate it. It's I think I've got some similar strengths and weaknesses, we'll call them. So it's I feel like
you're on the journey. That's what it's important. And we all have our own journey. And most things just keep moving forward. The fact that you're going this direction is positive.
Thank you, David.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure.
Let's go get the books and anything